They say happiness is the quiet between two storms. For Zoya and Theron, the quiet lasted 2 years. 2 years of proving the world wrong. 2 years of building a paradise on the ashes of rejection. But the thing about storms is that they don't knock before they enter. Zoya sat on a velvet blanket spread across the grass, the fabric cool against her legs. She wasn't wearing a crown. She was wearing a simple white dress, her dark curls tied back loosely with a ribbon. To the world, she was the Luna, the queen who rose from nothing. To the toddler giggling in the grass, she was just Mama. Careful, Kale, Zoya called out softly, her voice filled with a tenderness she once thought she'd never possess. Prince Kale, 2 years old and sturdy on his legs, was chasing a butterfly. He stumbled, landed on his padded bottom, and looked ready to cry until he saw the butterfly land on his knee. He froze, his eyes widening in wonder. Blue eyes. Bright, clear, unmistakable sapphire blue. Just like his father's. Zoya felt that familiar pang in her chest. Relief mixed with a strange, lingering ache. He is normal, she thought. No gold. No silver. No curse. He has your focus, a deep voice rumbled from behind her. Zoya didn't turn. She knew that scent better than her own. Cedarwood, fresh rain, and the underlying, spicy musk of a powerful alpha. Theron dropped onto the blanket beside her, discarding his heavy ceremonial cape. He pulled Zoya into his side immediately, his arm wrapping around her waist like an iron band of protection. And he has your stubbornness, Zoya countered, leaning her head on his shoulder. He refused to eat his porridge this morning until I pretended the spoon was a dragon. Theron chuckled, the sound vibrating against her ribs. A dragon? Smart boy. Dragons are tasty. He kissed the top of her head, lingering there, inhaling her scent. Zoya closed her eyes, letting the safety of him wash over her. This was their life now. No drama. No rejection. Just this warm, solid love that felt as inevitable as the sunrise. You're tense, Theron murmured against her hair. He wasn't asking. He felt the slight rigidity in her muscles. Zoya opened her eyes, one gold, one silver, and looked at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that matched her gaze. I had the dream again, she whispered. Theron pulled back slightly, his expression shifting from playful husband to concerned alpha. He cupped her face in his large hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. The mist, Zoya nodded. And the silence. Theron, it was so quiet. No birds. No wind. Just nothing. And then, the burning. She touched her eyes unconsciously. It felt like someone was trying to pry them open. Theron kissed her eyelids, one by one. A gesture of worship. It's just a nightmare, my love, he promised, his blue eyes fierce with conviction. The healers checked you. The wards around the kingdom are strong. Nothing can get to you. I won't let it. I know, Zoya smiled, though the cold feeling in her gut didn't leave. You are the strongest alpha in the lands. And you, Theron said, pressing his forehead to hers, are the woman who brought me to my knees without throwing a single punch. They kissed, slow and deep, ignoring the guards posted at the garden perimeter. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed. Then it stopped abruptly. Zoya didn't notice. She was too busy drowning in the love of the king who chose her. The castle settled into slumber. The only light in the royal chambers came from the dying embers in the fireplace. Kale was asleep in the nursery down the hall, guarded by 2 elite warriors. Zoya lay in Theron's arms, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was her lullaby. But sleep wouldn't come. The silence from her dream, it was creeping into the room. Zoya sat up slowly, careful not to wake Theron. She walked to the balcony doors. The glass was cool under her fingertips. She looked out at the forest surrounding Lunaris. Usually, the night was full of sounds. Crickets. Owls. The distant howl of a patrol wolf. Tonight? Nothing. It was as if the world was holding its breath. Snap. A sound. Small, but impossible to miss in the unnatural quiet. It came from the main gates. Zoya narrowed her eyes. The gates were guarded by 12 shifts of wolves. There should be movement. Torches. But the torches were out. Theron, Zoya whispered. The fear wasn't a slow creep anymore. It was a sudden spike of adrenaline. Theron, wake up. Theron grunted, reaching for her empty side of the bed. Zoya? Something is wrong, she said, her voice trembling. The guards at the gate. They aren't moving. Theron was awake instantly. The transition from sleep to battle-ready was terrifyingly fast. He was out of bed and at her side in a second, his senses expanding outward. He stood still, naked and powerful in the moonlight, listening. Smelling. Then, his pupils blew wide. Blood, he snarled. Old blood. And sulfur. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his sword belt from the chair and threw Zoya her training leathers. Get dressed, he ordered, his voice the command of an alpha king. Get to Kale. Go to the safe room. I'm not leaving you, Zoya argued, pulling on her tunic with shaking hands. Zoya, this isn't a raid. Theron turned to her, his face pale. I can't sense them. I can smell the blood, but I can't sense life. Whatever is out there, it has no heartbeat. Boom. The balcony doors shattered inward. Zoya screamed, shielding her face as glass rained down like diamonds. Theron roared, shifting midair as he tackled the shadow that flew into the room. But it wasn't a wolf. It was a nightmare. A pale, tall, hairless creature with no eyes. Theron, a massive golden wolf, sank his teeth into the creature's neck. It should have been a killing blow. But the creature didn't even flinch. It grabbed Theron by the fur and slammed him into the stone floor with a force that shook the entire tower. Crunch. Theron yelped, a sound Zoya had never heard from him. Theron. Zoya grabbed her dagger, the silver blade glinting. The creature stood over Theron, pinning the Alpha King down with one skeletal foot. It turned its smooth, eyeless face toward Zoya. It smiled. A tear in its skin that revealed too many teeth. The vessel, it hissed. The voice sounded like wind whistling through a graveyard. You shine so bright, little key. Zoya backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs. What are you? We are the end, the creature rasped. It stepped off Theron, who was struggling to rise, his leg clearly broken. The creature glided toward Zoya. One eye of Sunday. One eye of moon. Open for us. It reached out. Zoya slashed with her dagger. A perfect defensive strike Theron had taught her. The blade cut the creature's arm. But instead of blood, black dust poured out. And the wound knitted itself together in seconds. Steel cannot cut the void, the creature mocked. It grabbed Zoya by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Zoya clawed at the cold, dead skin. Her vision began to blur. Is this it? She thought wildly. 2 years of happiness, and it ends like this? Open, the creature commanded, staring into her mismatched eyes. Zoya felt a burning heat building behind her retinas. Crash. The bedroom door splintered. Put her down. The roar didn't sound human. It sounded like a demon crawling out of hell. A blur of black motion tore across the room. 2 curved blades, sleek and shimmering with cold starlight, sliced through the air. Schluck. Schluck. The creature's arms were severed at the elbows. Zoya fell to the floor, gasping for air. The creature shrieked, stumbling back. Standing over Zoya was a man. He was covered in sweat, dirt, and black ooze. His chest was heaving. He held the twin curved blades in a reverse grip, a stance of pure lethal aggression. He turned his head slightly. Dark eyes. Wild hair. A face etched with 2 years of torment. Vorian. The Alpha King of Shadowmoor. You. Zoya wheezed, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Vorian didn't look at her. He couldn't. If he looked at her, he would break. He kept his eyes on the regenerating monster. "Get Theron," Vorian barked, his voice rough. "And get the boy. We are leaving." "Vorian?" Theron groaned from the floor, shifting back to human form. He was naked, bleeding, and confused. "Why?" "Because my kingdom is burning." Vorian screamed, finally snapping. He spun around, and Zoya saw the raw, bleeding desperation in his eyes. "Shadowmoor is gone, Theron. They took everything. And they are here for her." The creature hissed, its arms slowly growing back. "The Shadow King," it laughed. "You left your wife to die." Vorian flinched as if struck physically. The pain on his face was so naked, so raw, that Zoya felt it in her own chest. "She isn't dead yet," Vorian whispered, gripping his blades until his knuckles turned white. "And neither is Zoya." He looked at the creature, his expression hardening into cold, murderous steel. "Run," Vorian told them. "I'll buy you time." "We fight together," Theron gritted out, dragging himself up using the bedpost. "You can't fight them in that form." Vorian snarled, slashing a regenerating limb. "My shadows feed them. Your physical attacks are useless." "Then why are you human?" Theron demanded, blood dripping from his chin. "Because darkness doesn't hurt darkness," Vorian shouted, his star metal blades sparking against the creature's skin. "Only these blades work for me. But you are the sun. Your blood burns them. That's why he didn't kill you instantly." He tossed a spare dagger to Zoya. "You are the fire, Theron. I am the steel. Now go. Get the child." Zoya scrambled up, grabbing Theron's arm. "Kale. We need Kale." They ran into the hallway. The castle was a war zone. The beautiful tapestries were burning. The mist was everywhere. But amidst the chaos, Zoya's mind was stuck on one thing. Vorian was here. He had come. And the look in his eyes when the monster mentioned his wife. It wasn't the look of a man who didn't care. It was the look of a man who was being torn apart. They made it to the stables just as the main keep collapsed. Theron was limping heavily, clutching Kale against his chest. Zoya was riding a horse, pulling Theron up behind her. Vorian rode his own black stallion, flanking them. They burst out of the gates, galloping into the dark forest. Behind them, Lunaris, the city of light, was being swallowed by the white mist. They rode for an hour, putting distance between them and the cryo. Finally, by a hidden stream, Vorian signaled to stop. "We can't stop," Theron argued, sliding off the horse and wincing. "The horses will die," Vorian said shortly. "And so will you if you don't bind that leg." The three of them stood in the moonlight. An awkward, broken triangle. Theron, the Golden King, battered but holding his son. Zoya, the Luna, terrified but standing tall. And Vorian, the Shadow King, standing apart, looking back toward the direction of his own fallen kingdom. "Explain," Theron demanded. He handed Kale to Zoya. "Now. Why are you here? And what are those things?" Vorian sheathed his blades. He looked exhausted. "They are the cryo," Vorian said. "They attacked Shadowmoor 2 nights ago. We didn't stand a chance." He took a shaky breath. "They weren't killing for sport. They were interrogating. They wanted to know where the key was." He looked at Zoya. "They wanted you. And your wife?" Zoya asked softly. She remembered the rumors. Seraphina. A political match. Vorian looked away. His jaw clenched. "Seraphina, she led the evacuation. She's smarter than me. Braver." His voice cracked. "She took a hit meant for me. The cryo leader," he cursed her. A slow-acting poison from the void. He looked at Zoya, and for the first time in 2 years, she saw the bond flare in his eyes. But he pushed it down. He crushed it under the weight of his duty. He told me the only cure is the heart of the void itself, and the only one who can open the void is you. Zoya stepped back. You came to trade me? Theron growled, stepping in front of Zoya. No. Vorian shouted, his eyes flashing. I came to save you. If the cryo get you, they open the void and everyone dies. Seraphina, you, the boy, everyone. He pointed a shaking finger at Zoya. You are the key, Zoya. But you are also the weapon. If we get you to the lunar spire, you can use that power to destroy them. To close the void forever. And Seraphina? Zoya asked. If the void closes. Vorian whispered, hope and despair warring in his voice. The curse lifts. She lives. Theron studied his rival. He saw the jealousy. He saw the lingering love for Zoya. But he also saw a desperate husband terrified of losing his wife. You're asking us to trust you, Theron said. After everything. I'm asking you to use me, Vorian corrected. I have the weapons. I know the way. I don't care if you hate me. Just let me save her. Zoya looked at Kale, sleeping in her arms. Then at Theron. Then at Vorian. She saw the conflict in Vorian. He was fighting his biology to honor his vows. We go to the spire, Zoya decided. Zoya. Theron started. He saved us tonight, Theron, Zoya said firmly. And if we don't stop this, Kale has no future. She walked up to Vorian. Close enough to smell the smoke on him. We will save your wife, Vorian, she said. Vorian looked at her. For a second, he wanted to touch her. To pull her close and let the bond soothe his battered soul. But he thought of Seraphina, bleeding on the floor of their bedroom, telling him to go. He stepped back. Thank you, he said stiffly. Your Majesty. They say that survival is not about who is the strongest, but who can endure the silence. The forest was not silent that night. It was screaming. Not with sound, but with the presence of things that did not belong in this world. Vorian led the way. The fallen king of Shadowmoor moved through the dense undergrowth like a phantom, his black stallion left behind miles ago to confuse the scent trail. He held one of his curved black blades in his hand, cutting through vines and branches with efficient, brutal strokes. Behind him, Zoya supported Theron. The Golden King was strong, his will unbreakable, but his leg was shattered. Every step was a battle against agony. His face was pale, covered in a sheen of cold sweat, but he refused to stop. He refused to show weakness in front of the rival who had once discarded his mate. We need to rest, Zoya whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She felt Theron stumble against her, his heavy weight dragging her down. Look at him, Vorian. He can't go another mile. Vorian stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He stood there, his back tense, listening to the darkness. His instincts were warring with each other. The wolf inside him wanted to run to Zoya, to pick her up, to carry her to safety. The man inside him wanted to keep moving to save his dying wife. But the king inside him knew that a dead ally was useless. Fine, Vorian said, his voice rough like gravel. There is a cave up the ridge. We stopped for 4 hours. No fire. The climb to the cave was grueling. When they finally collapsed onto the cold stone floor, Theron groaned, a sound torn from his chest. Zoya was instantly at his side, tearing strips from her tunic to rebind his leg. The bone was knitting together, alpha healing was miraculous, but the dark magic of the cryo was slowing it down. The wound looked angry, purple veins spreading from the bruise. I'm fine, Theron gritted out, trying to sit up as Zoya worked. Stop fussing. I will stop fussing when you stop bleeding, Zoya retorted softly, her hands gentle on his skin. She kissed his forehead, checking for fever. From the mouth of the cave, Vorian watched them. He stood in the shadows, keeping guard, but his eyes were fixed on the couple. He saw the way Zoya touched Theron. He saw the way Theron looked at her, as if she were the only source of light in the universe. It was a look Vorian had never given her 2 years ago. And now, it was a look he had no right to give. He turned away, his hand drifting to the pocket near his heart, where a small, blood-stained handkerchief rested. Seraphina's. Here, Vorian said, tossing a water skin toward them. It landed near Zoya's feet. Drink. You're dehydrated. Zoya looked at the water skin, then at Vorian. Thank you, she said. Don't thank him, Theron growled, pushing himself up against the cave wall. His blue eyes were clouded with pain, but sharp with jealousy. We don't need his charity. We need his water, Theron, Zoya said firmly, uncorking the skin and holding it to Theron's lips. Drink. Please. For me. Theron glared at Vorian over the rim of the skin, drinking deeply. The tension in the small cave was thick enough to choke on. 2 kings. 1 queen. And a history full of broken shards. Vorian walked deeper into the cave, sitting on a rock opposite them. He began sharpening his blade, the rhythmic shhhshhh sound filling the silence. Why her? Theron asked suddenly. The question hung in the air, aggressive and raw. Vorian didn't look up. Why who? Your wife, Theron spat the word. You rejected Zoya because she wasn't perfect. Because she had mismatched eyes. And now you're running across the world, fighting monsters, for a political match. Did you finally find someone perfect enough for your ego? Vorian? Zoya stiffened. Theron, stop. No, Vorian said, stopping the blade. He looked up, and his dark eyes were incredibly tired. Seraphina isn't perfect. She has a temper. She hates the cold. She can't cook to save her life. And she knows. Knows what? Zoya asked. She knows I don't love her the way a mate should, Vorian admitted, his voice quiet. She knows that every full moon, my wolf howls for you. She knows I am a broken man. He looked at Zoya then, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. But she stayed, Vorian continued. She didn't leave. She didn't mock me. She built a kingdom with me. She managed the court when I was too depressed to leave my room. She saved my life a dozen times, not with a sword, but with her mind. Vorian stood up, pacing restlessly. I didn't know what love was 2 years ago, he said. I thought love was a lightning bolt. A bond given by the moon. I thought it was easy. But Seraphina taught me that love is a choice. It is waking up every day and choosing to stay, even when it hurts. He looked at Theron. I learned that from her. And I see that same choice in you, Theron. You chose Zoya when the world told you not to. I respect that now. The silence that followed was different. The hostility hadn't vanished, but it had shifted. Theron looked down at his hands, his anger deflating slightly. She sounds formidable, Zoya said softly. She is, Vorian smiled, a sad, fleeting thing. And she is dying because she pushed me out of the way. So do not talk to me about ego, Theron. I am here to pay a debt. Suddenly, Kale stirred in Zoya's arms. The toddler whimpered, waking up in the cold, strange place. He looked around, his lower lip trembling, ready to cry. Shoo, baby, it's okay, Zoya cooed, rocking him. But Kale was hungry, cold, and scared. His cry began to rise, a sound that would echo in the silent forest. Theron tried to move to comfort his son, but his legs seized up, making him hiss in pain. He couldn't help. He was the Alpha King, and he couldn't even comfort his own child. Vorian moved. He didn't ask. He simply reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of dried venison. He knelt, not too close, but close enough. Hey, little wolf, Vorian whispered. His voice, usually so rough, dropped an octave. It became gentle. Look at this. Kale stopped crying, sniffing the meat. He looked at the stranger with wide, blue eyes. You're hungry, aren't you? Vorian smiled. It's tough being a prince on the run. He handed the meat to Kale. The boy grabbed it with chubby fists and started gnawing on it. Vorian reached out, hesitating for a second, then gently ruffled the boy's dark curls. "He looks like you," Vorian said to Zoya. He didn't look at her eyes. He looked at her mouth, the curve of her jaw. Zoya felt a strange flutter in her chest. Not love, but memory. The ghost of the bond stirred, recognizing the father of her destiny, even if he wasn't the father of her child. "Get away from him," Theron growled. It wasn't a warning. It was a command. Theron struggled to his feet, ignoring the agony in his leg. He limped between Vorian and Zoya, his body shielding them. "He is my son," Theron snarled, his eyes flashing gold. "Mine." Vorian stood up slowly, raising his hands in surrender. "I know he is yours, Theron. I'm just feeding him." "I don't need your help feeding my family," Theron snapped. His insecurity was bleeding out. He felt useless, broken. And seeing Vorian, strong, capable, lethal Vorian, playing with his son, looking at his wife, it was twisting a knife in his gut. "We should move," Theron said, turning his back on Vorian. "The sun is coming up." Zoya watched Theron limp toward the cave entrance. She saw the tremble in his shoulders. She stood up, handing Kale to him gently, letting him feel the weight of his son, letting him feel needed. "Theron," she whispered, touching his arm. "You are the only father he will ever know. And the only king I will ever want." Theron looked at her, his eyes searching hers for any sign of doubt. He found none. He exhaled, leaning his forehead against hers. "I hate him, Zoya. I hate that he is here." "I know," she said. "But we need him. Just for a little longer." Outside the cave, the mist began to curl around the trees again. The silence returned. And deep in the woods, a shriek echoed. They had found the scent. "We run," Vorian said from the entrance, his blades already drawn. The second night, they were ambushed in a grove of withered birch trees. Not by the main cry of force, but by a pack of corrupted wolves, twisted, leaking shadows. Vorian recognized them. They were his own patrols. "Don't kill them," Vorian pleaded, drawing his blades with shaking hands. "They were my people." Theron could barely stand, but he raised his sword. "They are monsters now, Vorian. It's them or us." The fight erupted without warning. A corrupted wolf lunged for the injured Theron. Vorian instinctively moved to help, but two more pinned him down. It was Zoya who moved. She didn't use a dagger. She used the momentum Theron had taught her, sidestepping a lunge and sending the beast crashing into a sharp stump. "Behind you!" Zoya screamed. Theron spun, fighting through the agony in his leg, and slashed. His golden blade severed the shadow stalking Vorian. Vorian froze for a second, looking at the man who had stolen his love. "We're even," Theron wheezed. Vorian didn't speak. He silently dispatched his remaining opponents. In that moment, they weren't rivals. They were soldiers in the same trench. Zoya watched the two men fighting back to protect her, her heart twisting. They reached the Whispering Bridge, a narrow arch of stone spanning a bottomless chasm. The wind here was fierce, howling like a dying god. "We have to cross one by one," Vorian shouted over the wind. He went first, moving with the grace of a shadow. He reached the other side and turned to cover them. Zoya went next, carrying Kale strapped to her chest. She moved slowly, her eyes fixed on Vorian's figure on the other side. "Don't look down," she told herself. "Just look at him." She was halfway across when the screech came. From the cliffs above, 3 cryo descended. But these had wings, leathery, tattered wings that allowed them to glide. They dove straight for Zoya. "Zoya!" Theron screamed from the near side. Zoya drew her dagger, but she couldn't fight and hold the bridge at the same time. The first creature slammed into her. She stumbled, her foot slipping off the edge. She fell. One hand caught the ledge. Kale screamed against her chest. She dangled over the abyss, her fingers slipping on the icy stone. The creature hovered above her, raising a claw to stomp on her hand. "Let go," the creature hissed. An arrow flew through the air. Black steel. It pierced the creature's throat. On the far side, Vorian had thrown one of his curved blades like a boomerang. It was an impossible shot. "Hold on," Theron roared. Theron didn't think. He didn't care about his broken leg. He shifted. The golden wolf exploded onto the narrow bridge. He sprinted, ignoring the pain that must have been blinding. He leaped over Zoya, slamming into the remaining two creatures midair. The impact sent Theron and the monsters crashing onto the narrow stone path. He bit, he clawed, he thrashed. He was a whirlwind of golden fury. He threw one monster off the cliff. He ripped the throat out of the second. But the bridge was cracking. Zoya was slipping. Her fingers were numb. "Theron," she cried. Theron turned. He was bleeding heavily again, his leg dragging. He crawled to the edge. He shifted back to human form, reaching down. He grabbed Zoya's wrist. "I've got you," he grunted, his face red with exertion. "I've got you." He pulled. Muscles screaming, he hauled Zoya and Kale up over the ledge. They collapsed onto the stone, gasping, shaking. Theron wrapped his arms around them, burying his face in Zoya's neck. "I thought I lost you," he sobbed dryly. "I thought I lost you." Zoya held him tight. "You saved us. You saved us." From the other side of the bridge, Vorian watched. He had thrown the blade that gave them the chance. But Theron was the one who had caught her. Theron was the hero. Vorian walked over, retrieving his blade from the dead creature's corpse. He wiped the black blood on his trousers. "Good throw," Theron said, not looking up. "Good catch," Vorian replied. For the first time, there was no bite in their words. Just the exhaustion of men who had stared death in the face. "The spire is ahead," Vorian said, pointing up the mountain. "We are almost there." Zoya looked up. The peak of the mountain was shrouded in red storm clouds. The energy coming from it made her skin prickle. The void was close. "Let's finish this," Zoya said, standing up and helping Theron rise. They walked the last mile together. Not as enemies. Not as friends. But as survivors. And as they walked, Zoya realized something terrifying. She didn't know who would be coming back down this mountain. The higher they climbed, the harder it became to breathe. The air was no longer air, it was a heavy, suffocating blanket of crushing gravity leaking from the void above. Theron stopped. He leaned heavily against a jagged rock, his face gray, covered in a sheen of cold sweat. His broken leg dragged behind him, a dead weight. The dark magic of the cryo was festering in the wound, preventing his natural alpha healing from working. "We need to stop," Zoya gasped, reaching for him. "Theron, you can't go on like this." "I can't stop," Theron rasped, coughing. Every cough brought up specks of blood. "If we stop, Kale dies." He looked up at the summit. The enemy was waiting. He was the Alpha King. He was the shield. And a shield could not be broken. Theron closed his eyes. He took a deep, shuddering breath, and his hand moved to the crest of his own chest, right over his heart. "Go on, Vorian," Theron ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "Take Zoya and the boy. I will catch up." Vorian frowned. "You can barely walk, Theron. You aren't catching up to anyone." Theron didn't answer. He dug his fingers into his own chest, pressing down on a specific pressure point known only to the royal bloodline of Linares. Zoya saw the veins in his neck bulge. She saw a flicker of gold light beneath his skin, not the warm gold of healing, but a scorching, angry gold that looked like molten lava. Her eyes widened in horror. She recognized the signs from the ancient scrolls in the library. "Theron, no!" Zoya screamed, grabbing his wrist. "You can't. The sun's tithe is forbidden. It consumes your life force." Theron looked at her. His eyes were already changing, glowing with a terrifying intensity. It is the only way, he said. It will kill you. Zoya cried, tears streaming down her face. The books say the pain is like 1,000 thorns wrapping around your heart. You are trading years of your life for minutes of strength. Time is a luxury we don't have, Zoya, Theron said softly. He pulled his hand free and pressed harder. A sound like cracking thunder echoed from inside his body. Theron threw his head back and roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that shook the snow from the cliffs. It wasn't just pain. It was a stripping away of self. Zoya watched in horror as Theron's golden hair lost its luster in an instant, the roots turning stark white. It was like autumn seizing summer in a single heartbeat. Beneath his skin, golden veins bulged like flowing lava trying to burst free. He gritted his teeth so hard his gums began to bleed. Every inch of his muscle spasmed, fighting against the overwhelming, borrowed power. Theron, stop. Zoya cried, trying to pull his hand away. You'll burn yourself to ash. Theron's eyes snapped open. The familiar sapphire blue was gone, replaced by a terrifying, solid gold, the color of a dying star's final explosion. He gently pushed Zoya back, though his skin was burning hot to the touch. Even if I become ash, Theron's voice overlapped with a power that sounded ancient and hollow, I will be the pile of ash that protects you. The golden light exploded from his veins. It rushed down his body to his shattered leg. With a sickening crunch that made Vorian flinch, the bones snapped back into place. The purple rod of the dark magic was burned away by the searing heat of Theron's life force. But Zoya could see the cost. Theron gasped, clutching his chest. His skin was pale, almost translucent. Every breath he exhaled was a red mist. The air around him smelled of copper and ozone. He was burning himself alive from the inside out to fuel his body. Why? Zoya sobbed, touching his face. Why would you do this? Theron straightened up. He wiped the blood from his mouth. He picked up his massive broadsword and spun it, the air whistling around the blade. Because I am a father, Theron said, his voice echoing with a power that wasn't entirely mortal. I am a king. And a king does not limp into battle to save his family. He marches. He looked at Vorian. Don't let me waste this, Shadow King. Vorian stared at him. He saw the sacrifice. He saw the sheer will of a man who would burn his own future to protect the present. I won't, Vorian promised, drawing his twin blades. Let's move, Theron commanded. But first, the boy. They climbed the final 100 yards to the edge of the plateau. Just below the lip of the summit, carved into the mountainside by ancient winds, was a small, deep fissure. A cave barely big enough for a child. Theron stopped. He looked at Kale, sleeping peacefully in Zoya's arms, wrapped in Vorian's cloak. Put him here, Theron whispered. Zoya hesitated, clutching her son tighter. Alone? We cannot take him up there, Zoya, Vorian said gently. Where we are going, there will be no place to hide. Zoya nodded, tears blurring her vision. She knelt and placed Kale deep into the fissure. She arranged the cloak around him, tucking him in. He looked so small against the harsh rock. She kissed his forehead. Stay quiet, my little wolf, she whispered. Mama and Papa are going to fight the monsters. Wait for us. She pulled away, her heart tearing. Theron knelt beside her. He placed his large hand on Kale's chest for a moment, closing his eyes. A faint golden shimmer transferred from his hand to the boy's cloak. A protection ward. Weak, because Theron was draining himself, but it was all he had left to give. Be brave, Theron whispered to his son. He stood up, pulling Zoya with him. He rolled a heavy stone in front of the fissure, leaving just enough crack for air, but too small for any large creature to enter. He is safe, Theron said, his voice hard steel now. Now, we finish this. Let's go, Theron commanded. They stormed the summit. The black glass plateau was waiting. The mist parted, revealing the legion of cryo warriors standing in silence. Behind them, the Ancient One sat on his throne of debris, waiting. Theron didn't wait for a speech. He didn't wait for a signal. He was a dying star, and he intended to take everyone with him. He charged. It was terrifying to watch. Theron moved faster than any wolf should be able to move. He hit the front line like a cannonball. His sword was a blur of gold. He didn't just kill the monsters, he obliterated them. He cleaved through bone armor, through flesh, through weapons. Every swing of his sword cost him. Zoya could see it. With every blow, Theron winced, his hand clutching his chest for a fraction of a second as the invisible thorns tightened around his heart. But he never slowed down. Vorian was right beside him. Inspired by the Golden King's fury, the Shadow King fought with a cold, lethal precision. They were a perfect storm. Gold and black. Fire and shadow. Zoya was no longer burdened by the child. She was free to fight. She stayed in the center, a whirlwind of silver steel. When a creature tried to flank Theron, Zoya was there, her dagger finding the weak point in its armor. Nice strike. Theron roared, crushing a skull with his bare hand. They carved a path through the army, reaching the center of the plateau. The Ancient One stood up, floating down from his throne. You smell of burnt blood, little wolf, the Ancient One sneered at Theron. You are running on fumes. And you talk too much, Theron roared. He lunged at the Ancient One, his sword swinging for the entity's neck. The Ancient One raised a hand. A blast of gravity hit Theron. Theron should have flown backward. He should have broken. But the forbidden magic held him. He dug his boots into the glass, carving deep furrows. He groaned, blood pouring from his nose, but he kept pushing forward, inch by inch, against the crushing weight of a god. Zoya, go! Theron yelled, blood spraying from his lips. Get to the altar! Vorian grabbed Zoya's arm. Come on! They ran past the struggling Theron. Zoya looked back, her heart tearing in two. She saw her husband, veins glowing gold, holding back the attention of the Ancient One, buying them time with his life. They reached the altar of the moon. It was humming with unstable energy. But before Zoya could touch the runes, the Ancient One grew bored. Enough, the entity whispered. He clenched his fist. Theron's golden aura shattered. He screamed as his ribs collapsed under the invisible force. He was thrown across the plateau, crashing onto the altar steps. He tried to get up, but the forbidden magic had run out. He lay there, gasping, unable to move. Theron! Zoya screamed, rushing to him. The Ancient One floated toward them. He ignored Zoya. He looked at Vorian. And you, the entity hissed. The Hollow One. The one who reeks of regret. Vorian froze. The entity's voice wasn't just sound, it was a mental drill, digging into his deepest insecurities. You are empty, the Ancient One whispered into Vorian's mind. You rejected your mate. You do not love your wife. You are a failure of a king. Why fight? Why not let go? Vorian dropped to his knees, clutching his head. Visions flooded him. He saw Zoya, glowing and perfect, the mate he threw away. He felt the crushing weight of his wolf demanding he claim her. But then, the vision changed. He saw Seraphina. Not a queen, but a woman. He saw her sitting by the window in Shadowmoor, waiting for him. He saw the ink stains on her fingers. He felt the warmth of her hand when she held his during his nightmares. He remembered her voice on the night of the attack. Go, Vorian. Save yourself. She hadn't asked him to be a hero. She hadn't asked him to be an alpha. She just asked him to live. His wolf screamed. Zoya is the mate. But his heart whispered, Seraphina is my home. Vorian looked up. He looked at Theron, broken and bleeding, who had burned his own life for his family. He looked at Zoya, terrified but ready to die for her husband. And he realized he wasn't empty. He was just full of the wrong things. I am not hollow, Vorian snarled, standing up. I am full of mistakes. But I am going to fix them. Zoya! Vorian yelled. Open the channel. Zoya hesitated. If I open it without a conduit, the void will eat us. Use me. Vorian stepped onto the altar. No. Zoya screamed. It will kill you. Vorian looked at her. And this time, there was no hunger in his eyes. No obsession. Only peace. It won't kill me, Zoya, Vorian said softly. But it will cost me everything that makes me an alpha. And I am willing to pay. He looked at Theron. Take care of her, Golden King. Theron nodded weakly, understanding the price. Vorian turned to Zoya. Do it. Now. Zoya placed her hands on the altar. She let the power flow. The sun and moon in her eyes ignited. 2 beams of light shot up, piercing the void. The Ancient One shrieked, rushing to stop them. But Vorian intercepted the light. He grabbed the beams with his bare hands. He didn't burn. Instead, he screamed as something was ripped from his soul. A massive, shadowy shape was pulled from Vorian's body. It looked like a black wolf made of smoke. It howled, a sound of pure agony and loss. It was his wolf. His alpha spirit. The source of his strength, his instincts, his bond with Zoya. Vorian was feeding his own soul to the void to choke it. Seraphina. Vorian whispered, as the darkness consumed him. I'm coming home. The world turned white. The white light didn't fade slowly. It vanished in a blink, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt like the world had stopped turning. Zoya gasped, air rushing back into her lungs. She was lying on the cold glass of the plateau. Above her, the sky was no longer a swirling vortex of purple and green. It was blue. A piercing, clear, beautiful blue. The void was gone. The Ancient One was dust. Theron. She scrambled to her knees, her body aching. She found him lying near the edge of the altar. The golden aura was gone. His skin was gray, translucent, and the veins in his neck were no longer glowing. They were dark, like bruised ivy climbing his throat. Zoya placed her hands on his chest. His heart was beating, but it was slow. A heavy, labored rhythm. Thump, pause, thump. You idiot, Zoya sobbed, pressing her forehead to his chest. You reckless, wonderful idiot. Theron's eyes fluttered open. They were still blue, but they were dimmer now. The fire behind them had burned down to embers. He coughed, and a trickle of blood ran down his chin. Did we get him? He rasped. We got him, Zoya cried, wiping the blood from his face. You did it. Theron tried to smile, but he winced, clutching his heart. The thorns of the sun's tide had vanished, but the scars remained inside. He had traded years for minutes, and his body would never fully forget the price. Where is Vorian? Theron whispered. Zoya froze. The bond. That persistent, nagging pull that had lived in the back of her mind for 2 years, it was gone. It wasn't just quiet. It was absent. Like a limb that had been amputated. She turned. Vorian lay on the steps of the altar. The black armor he had conjured was gone. His twin blades were shattered shards of metal scattered on the ground. He was lying in his torn tunic, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Vorian? Zoya called out softly. He didn't move. She crawled over to him, terrified of what she would find. When she reached him, she reached out to touch his shoulder. Her hand connected. Flesh on flesh. Nothing. No spark. No electric jolt. No instinct screaming mate. It was just a man. Just skin and bone. Vorian opened his eyes. Zoya gasped. They were brown. A soft, warm, earthy brown. The black, abyssal eyes of the shadow wolf were gone forever. He blinked, staring up at the sun. He lifted a trembling hand to shield his face. It's quiet, Vorian whispered. His voice was raw, stripped of the alpha's growl. Zoya looked at him, tears welling up in her mismatched eyes. You did it, Vorian. You closed the gate. I fed him, Vorian corrected, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. I fed him the wolf. He choked on it. He tried to sit up, but his arms shook uncontrollably. He collapsed back onto the stone. He looked at his hands, human hands, weak and pale. He tried to reach for the power, for the shadow that had always been there to heal him, to strengthen him. It was an empty room. I'm nothing, Vorian whispered, a tear sliding down his temple. I am not a king. I am not an alpha. I am just meat. No, Theron's voice cut through the air. The Golden King had dragged himself over. He was leaning heavily on his sword, his face pale, but his eyes were respectful. You are a savior, Theron said. Theron offered his hand. Vorian looked at it. He looked at the rival who had beaten him, the rival who had burned his own life force to save his family. I don't have the strength to stand, Vorian admitted, shame coloring his cheeks. Then lean on me, Theron said. Vorian took the hand. Theron pulled him up. It was clumsy. It was painful. Two broken kings supporting each other on a mountain of glass. Let's get off this damn rock, Theron grunted. The descent was slow. Agonizingly slow. Zoya carried Kale, who had slept through the end of the world. Theron and Vorian leaned on each other, stumbling, bleeding, but moving. When they finally broke through the cloud layer and saw the valley below, they stopped. An army was waiting. Not monsters. Wolves. The survivors of Shadowmoor and the reinforcements of Linares. They stood in silence at the base of the mountain. And at the front of the line, sitting on a white horse, was a woman. She looked frail. Her skin was still pale from the poison, and she was wrapped in thick furs. But her back was straight. Her chin was held high. Seraphina. Vorian froze. He tried to pull away from Theron, to hide behind a rock. I can't, Vorian whispered, panic in his human eyes. Look at me. I'm broken. I have no wolf. I can't lead them. I can't be her king. You never needed a wolf to be a man, Vorian, Zoya said gently. Go to her. Vorian took a shaky breath. He stepped away from Theron's support. He stumbled, almost falling, but he caught himself. He walked down the last slope alone. Every step was a battle against his new human weakness. When Seraphina saw him, she didn't wait. She slid off her horse, her legs weak, and ran. Vorian fell to his knees in the snow before her. He couldn't look her in the eye. He bowed his head, waiting for the rejection. Waiting for her to realize he was useless now. I lost it, Vorian choked out. I lost the wolf, Seraphina. I have nothing left to give you. I am just a man. Seraphina dropped to her knees in the snow. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. She looked into his brown eyes, and she smiled. A smile full of tears and relief. I never married the wolf, Vorian, she whispered fiercely. I married you. But I loved her, Vorian confessed, the last weight of his guilt falling away. The bond. It's gone, isn't it? Seraphina asked, brushing the hair from his forehead. Yes, Vorian wept. It's gone. It's silent. Then fill the silence with me, Seraphina said. Vorian lunged forward, wrapping his arms around her. He buried his face in her neck, sobbing like a child. For the first time in his life, he wasn't holding her out of duty. He was holding her because she was his anchor. Because she was the only thing that mattered. Zoya and Theron watched from the ridge. Theron wrapped his arm around Zoya, pulling her close. He's going to be okay, Theron murmured. Zoya leaned against him, listening to the slow, heavy beat of his damaged heart. And us? She asked softly. Theron kissed her temple. We are alive, Zoya. That is enough. 5 years later. The world had healed, but it had changed. The kingdom of Linares was in its golden age. But the king did not run with the hunt anymore. Theron walked with a cane now, a sleek staff made of white iron. His hair had turned completely white at the temples, a permanent mark of the sun's tithe. He couldn't shift into his wolf form for long periods anymore. It strained his heart too much. But no one dared to call him weak. When the Alpha King entered a room, the air still crackled with power. Not the power of muscles, but the power of a man who had stared down a god and won. Suya stood on the balcony, watching Kale, now 7 years old, training with a wooden sword in the courtyard. He was fast. Strong. A letter lay open on the table beside her. It was stamped with the crest of Shadowmoor. Zoya. The harvest is good this year. Serafina has implemented a new trade council. She runs the meetings. I just make sure the wine is good. Being human is exhausting. My knees ache when it rains. I have to sleep 8 hours a night. And I can't smell a deer from a mile away. But I am happy. Serafina is pregnant. A girl, the healers say. I hope she has her mother's brains and none of my past. I don't think of the bond anymore. When I look at the moon, I just see a rock in the sky. It's a nice view. Give my regards to the Golden King. Tell him his cane makes him look distinguished, even if we both know he hates it. Your friend, Vorian. Zoya smiled, folding the letter. Friend. 5 years ago, that word would have been impossible. Now, it was the most precious thing she owned. Theron stepped out onto the balcony, the tap-tap of his cane announcing him. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. News from the human lands? He teased gently. Good news, Zoya said, leaning back into him. They are happy. And you? Theron asked, turning her around. Zoya looked at him. She looked at his white hair, the lines of pain that sometimes appeared around his eyes when he moved too fast. She traced the scar over his heart where the magic had burned him. I look at you, Zoya whispered, touching his chest. And I see the price of my life. I see the man who burned for me. Theron covered her hand with his. I would burn again, he promised. 1,000 times over. Zoya stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Below them, the kingdom continued. In the distance, the sun set on one side, and the moon rose on the other. Gold and silver. They were no longer a curse. They were no longer a key. They were just lights, guiding them home. The end. You have just listened to the final chapter of the Moon's Key saga from the Moonlight Maid's library. If Vorian's redemption and Theron's sacrifice touched your heart, please leave a like. It helps more than you know. What an incredible journey. From a rejected mate to the savior of the world. Vorian found his humanity by losing his wolf. Theron proved his love by burning his own life force. And Zoya. Zoya finally found her true freedom. I have to ask, who made the greater sacrifice in the end? Theron, who traded his health and lifespan? Or Vorian, who gave up his alpha identity forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready for our next adventure, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. The library is always open for you. Until the next story, sweet dreams.